Parlays and player props are back. It's week 4 of the NFL. I got 5 player props, 2 same game parlays, and 2 ladders that I do really like on Sunday. What's going on? My name's Austin from Calling Our Shot. If you are new to our channel, do me a favor. Go down below, hit that subscribe button, and if we go 7-0 in this video, I will give away $1,000 to someone that is subscribed to the channel and likes this video. That's all you got to do. And if I somehow go 0-7, I'll give away $2,000. That's how confident I am. We are not going 0-7. We're going to have a massive week. All you got to do, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Let's dive into our favorite picks. At the end of this video, I will talk about an Underdog Fantasy entry using a couple of the picks that I will talk about in this video. We're going to try to turn $50 into $100 or into $1,000. And the best part about Underdog Fantasy is up until October 4th, if you use our code COS, you will get a 100% deposit match up to $500. Normally, that goes up to $100. Now they've upped it all the way up to $500 to take advantage of it. It's pretty much only good through this weekend, so take advantage of that. And if you sign up with the COS code or the link in the description, you also will get a free square to use on Sunday Night Football with Patrick Mahomes. So take advantage. All the details down below. We have a bunch of other NFL videos for this NFL weekend. We got our favorite spread picks and a couple other props in the video posted on Friday afternoon. It looks exactly like this thumbnail. And then we also later on Saturday afternoon, evening around 5 p.m. we will post our long shot parlay where we're trying to turn $10 into $1,000 in just one parlay. Last week, I won't lie to you, mine was super close. I had 3 legs and on the hook. Basically on the hook. It was brutal. We'll talk about that in that video, plus give out some long shots. And some of the props in that video will be the ones we'll talk about in this one. So go check out that video. Thumbnail looks like the one on the screen. But we got a lot of action to go into. Let's dive into our first prop, one of the biggest games on the slate. Bills-Dolphins. I'm going to this guy. Jalen Waddle, over 59.5 receiving yards, -110 on Bet365. For my Bills fans out there, don't worry. I got a prop counting on a wide receiver and QB for your team a little bit later on in this video. But let's talk about Jalen Waddle. And honestly, I really like him. I think this is a great spot for him. I honestly like him up to 75 plus yards. And if that's a little bit of a sneak preview, if you haven't checked out that long shot parlay video, you would know, and you would if you have already watched it. You know I like him 75 plus, and he's in my long shot parlay. But Waddle, returning from a concussion that caused him to miss that 70-point outburst by the Dolphins last weekend. But I don't see really a dip in production here or a dip in his snap share. He's going to be out there a lot. And we've seen him Waddle. Week 1, 4 receptions, 5 targets, 78 yards. Cash in the 75 plus that we need. We only need 60 for this one. And then in week 2, 4 receptions, 6 targets, 86 yards. We've seen him do really well, and he has 60 plus receiving yards, aka hitting this over in 20 of 27 games with Tua Tagovailoa starting. A couple of the ones he went under were the games that we saw Tua unfortunately get injured and exit early in those contests. We've seen him be super good, and it's not like Waddle needs, high volume, 10 receptions, or he's not getting this line. This is a guy that's been doing it on 4 receptions, and we saw last year him do pretty well. Last year he had 102 and 114 receiving yards versus the Bills on only 3 and 4 receptions in those games. Jordan Poyer, the Bills star safety, is going to be out for this game. I imagine we see them play a lot of 2 high safety looks, try their best to stop Tyreek Hill, because we know how much of a game wrecker Tyreek Hill can be. That should leave Jalen Waddle open over the middle, and I think he'll be having a big day. He can do this in one play. We've seen him do that before. I really like Jalen Waddle over 59.5 receiving yards. If you're feeling bold, throw him up to 75 plus, which is close to plus 150. Jalen Waddle, we're riding with you. Now let's keep on moving. We got another one, and this is going to be our first ladder play, and I'll talk about it in a second. We're going to go with Adam Thielen. I like his over 4.5 receptions at -115 on DraftKings. We're putting 1 unit on that. 1 unit is just a bankroll management term. It's about 1% of your bankroll, depending on how you do your units. So if you're like normally betting $100 on your plays, one unit would be $100 on Adam Thielen. Then the other one would be $25 on his 6 plus receptions, which is plus 220 on Bet365. Now, if you don't have the ability to go up and take a little bit of a ladder, we're trying to go 1 rung is the first leg. The next rung is the second one with 6 plus receptions, just 1 more. Then just take his over, take it for 1 unit to over 4.5. But last week we took Thielen at 3.5 receptions. That was plus 120. It was the most sweat-free pick we've ever given out, probably. He hit that in the second quarter. He had 11 receptions. You look at Thielen so far this year. He's played on 88, 87, and 92% of snaps, and he's had 2, 7, and 11 receptions on 2, 9, and 14 targets. He's the #1 wide receiver for this Panthers offense, and they don't really have a lot of competition behind him. And while Bryce Young is back, I really wish it was Andy Dalton starting. Bryce Young's back, and we saw in that week 2 game, it took week 1, he stunk, but week 2, he kind of figured some things out, still didn't play well, but still was able to target Thielen on those easy receptions, and Thielen's he's a quarterback's best friend. This is a guy that's not running 40 yards downfield waving for him. No, Thielen's running like 5-10 yards, sitting in zones, and that's where Bryce Young is going to be looking for him. And we saw last week, that's all he did with Andy Dalton. They have a great chemistry. I imagine Bryce Young saw that game and said, hey, let me get Thielen the ball. And we've seen wide receivers have good success versus this team before, the Vikings this season. We saw last week, Keenan Allen, a big 18 receptions. His teammate Mike Williams had 7, Josh Palmer had 4. Then the week before that, A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith each had 4. Week before that, Chris Godwin had 5, Mike Evans had 6. So we've seen some wide receivers have success here, and we also saw the one time that one guy didn't get it done was against that Eagles team, and they had Dallas Goedert who had 6 receptions. So they had they ran the ball for like 259 yards on 48 carries. That is not this Carolina Panthers offense. They're not running the ball for that many times. And so I just think this is a revenge game too. We're rolling with Adam Thielen in a big time spot. I think he's going to be in a positive game script where they're going to have to be passing. And I think he'd get us 5 receptions to at least cash the 1 unit pay. But I think there's a good chance. I think the 6+ receptions for plus 220, I think is worth the stab just for 1 more reception. He easily has done it the last 2 weeks. Let's hope Thielen can keep bringing us some coin. But let's keep it moving to a guy that you all know, one of the best running backs in the league, off to a very slow start, Derrick Henry. I like his over 16.5 rushing attempts, plus 100 on DraftKings. The fact that you can get Derrick Henry for 100 plus rushing yards at plus 350 should show you exactly what kind of season Derrick Henry has had so far this year. But I think this is a great spot to target him in a very, very buy low spot for the Tennessee Titans as a whole. But you look at Derrick Henry so far this year, talk about his rushing attempts, which I'll abbreviate to RA, and then we'll talk about how Tannehill has done as well as them on third down. Because look at week 1, only 15 attempts for Derrick Henry. Tannehill, 16 for 34, 3 interceptions. They were 2 for 12 on third down. Week 2, 25 rushing attempts. They went into overtime, so I don't really count all of them. I think he had 4 attempts in overtime, but still 21 in regulation. Tannehill, 20 for 24. Titans, 6 for 13 on third down. Week 3, only 11 rushing attempts. Tannehill, 13 for 25. And again, 2 for 12 on third down. Very deja vu game to that week 1 game when we just saw a game script and everything go sideways and they just couldn't get it done. Obviously, if you're not converting on third down, not going to continue drives, and we're not going to see Derrick Henry continuously get those, long drives where we see him get 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 rushing attempts in a single drive. I think this is a good spot to buy low on them. They're returning back home, coming off a blowout, and I think they got a sneaky chance at beating the Bengals. I know people are just expecting the Bengals. Hey, they've won on Monday Night Football. Let's hammer them, throw them in all parlays. I think the Titans could have a chance, at least keep this game close against the Bengals, and I certainly think they can do that, and I just think Tannehill will bounce back, and we'll see them continue drives. Now, I know a lot of people are concerned, hey, he's getting outsnapped by Tajay Spears. I'm not too worried about that workload. We know King Henry is the backfield master. He is the leader in this backfield. He is the one that is going to get the rock when they need those short yardage, and when they're in the red zone, he's getting the ball. And Tajay Spears is a good story. He's good. He's a rookie, but I still do think this is Derrick Henry's backfield to lose. Last year, we saw in 16 games, Henry never went back-to-back games without having 17+ rushing attempts. And in fact, he went over this line in 14 of 16 games. I know it's been a slow start to the year for Henry, but I think they're going to run the football and have some good success. We've seen teams have success running the football versus the Bengals. You saw in the first 2 weeks of the season, the team ran the ball 40 and 37 times. That was the Ravens and the Browns. Last week, the Rams just said, we're done running the ball. Only ran it 13 times. I think you can have success there. They don't want Tannehill throwing the ball a ton. So I really think we'll see a good game from Derrick Henry. I don't mind his rushing yards, but I rather just the rushing attempts. I think if he hits the yards, it's probably a good chance that he's doing well and getting the ball a lot. So we'll take his rushing attempts line at 17, 16.5. We'll roll with him. Let's move to another running back that is in danger of losing his job, and he actually had a great week last week, so I don't think he loses his job this week. It's Alexander Mattison of the Minnesota Vikings, going back to that Thielen game, over 55.5 rushing yards, minus 109 on Caesars. And look, asking the Vikings to run the football is like pulling out teeth, but I think they're going to run the football here, and I think there's a couple reasons why. But look, Cam Akers probably going to be out there active, but I don't really. Cam Akers just has not been the same guy since we saw him get injured a couple years back with the Rams. He was traded here. I just don't see him taking a big workload here, and I think this is Madison's backfield to lose. And we saw last week, 20 rush attempts for 93 yards, and then he just had a good game. We'll take that. It was a losing effort, so that he didn't even get those, garbage time, not garbage time, but, those end of the game carries. And we saw prior to that, 11 for 34 in week 1, and then 8 for 28 in week 2. Like I said, asking the Vikings to run the football can be like pulling out teeth, but I think this is going to be a good spot for him. Those 2 weeks were against the Eagles and Buccaneers, 2 very stout rushing defenses. This is a better defense to run against the Panthers, that has been struggling, which we'll talk about in a second. But if you look at Kirk Cousins' passing attempts line, his line is sitting at 36.5, which is very odd. Kirk Cousins pass attempt 36.5. The guy's throwing 44, 44, and 50 times. This is an 0-3 Vikings team that needs to run the football. They're not going to win a ton of games. If you're asking Kirk Cousins to throw up 45 times, that's normally they're in a negative game script, and they're just not running the football in that game. It's not keeping the defense balanced. I think this is how you keep them balanced. It's a Panthers team that I think they should win against, and the Panthers are a team that you can run against as well. Panthers allowing 114.7 rushing yards per game. and that's on, with the fifth most in the NFL, and that's on 4.6 yards per carry. So it's not just a ton of volume. The guys are being able to run and have success here. And we see players with 10 or more rushing attempts versus the Panthers. You saw in week 1, Bijan Robinson, 56 yards. You saw Algier, his backfield mate, 75 yards. The week before that, or after that, Tony Jones, 34 yards. Worth noting, Taysom Hill, not a running back, but Taysom Hill at 75 rushing yards. And then Kenneth Walker last week, 97 yards against this team. So, look, at the end of the day, I think Madison's going to get the rock enough. Even if Cam Akers eats a little bit into it, he's the number one guy in this backfield. Madison should see the ball. Madison's rush attempts, or as I say, RAs, it's set to 13.5, juiced on the over, 14.5, plus 102 on FanDuel. Look, when he has 12 or more carries, he's hit this over in 10 of 12 career games. When he has 15 or more carries, he has 90 plus rushing yards in all 6 career games. So I certainly think Madison is due for another slightly big workload. I don't know if he gets 20 rushing attempts, but if he does get anywhere near that line, he should hit this with ease in a very plus matchup against the Panthers. Alexander Madison, we're rolling with you. Let's wrap it up with 2 same-game parlays, 1 ladder, and then 1 long shot underdog entry. Let's go to the Bills and Dolphins game. We're going with this same-game parlay. Stephon Diggs, 60 plus receiving yards, and Josh Allen, 25 plus rushing yards, minus 106 on FanDuel. Now, some books don't allow you to do 60 plus for a guy like Stephon Diggs. So if you have to go to 70, I don't hate that. I just realistically think these 2 props are pretty sharp. I think Allen can get to 25 pretty easily, but I think he ends like 35 to 50 range. Whereas I think Diggs gets above 60, but I think he ends between 60 and 90-ish yards. So I'd rather take this little safety same game parlay, and I think he can hit regardless of game script. Because we look at Diggs, he's been great this year. You look at him, 102, 66, and 111 yards. He's had 13, 7, and 12 targets, and he's had 60 plus yards in 5 of 6 games with Buffalo against the 5 of the last 6 against Miami. Look, it's the Miami Dolphins. They're going to score some points. This is the Bills defense that has looked great recently, but look, the Dolphins are going to score points. This should be a close game. I'm certainly confident that Diggs, the number one guy on this offense, will get those 60 receiving yards. Not a lot of competition outside of Diggs. And you look at Josh Allen, 25 plus rushing yards. I mean, he's done that twice this season, 36, 7, and 46 rushing yards. He's had 47 and 77 last year versus Miami. He's had 25 plus in 8 of his last 10 versus the Dolphins, and 25 plus in 22 of 28 versus AFC East teams. So in those big divisional games, we see him running the football more. This also, when we see these big games, we see them kind of abandon the run and just put the ball in Josh Allen's hands and say, hey, go do your thing. I certainly think these 2 guys can get their job done. I don't mind either of their regular overs, but I think putting it in a same game parlay like this is a pretty safe way to do it in case there is a hook that comes, or maybe they get real close to the regular line. Stephon Diggs, Josh Allen, we're relying on both of you. And kind of in the same tune, we're going to a different game, very similar type same game parlay, because we're going to the Rams and Colts game. Puka Nacua, 60 plus receiving yards, just like Stephon Diggs, and Zach Moss, the Indianapolis Colts running back, 40 plus rushing yards, minus 116 on FanDuel. While I wish this was plus value, it's a very similar analysis to the last one. I think these 2 guys have great games, great matchups. I just don't love their regular lines, but I think they easily cash this. If you had to take a regular line, it would be Puka Nacua. I like his over in receiving yards. But like I talked about, Nacua has been great this year. 119, 147, and 72 receiving yards. And he had 15, 20, and 7 targets. I mean, this is a guy that's seen a large target share last week. Not a ton of targets against the Bengals, a team that basically was double teaming him. I still think that he'll have a great matchup here, and the Colts are going to stop the run. I mean, this is a Rams team that already abandoned the run last week. Maybe they try to run it a little bit more this week, but still, the Colts allow the 3rd fewest rushing yards per attempt, and they allow the 2nd most passing yards or receiving yards to wide receivers, a ton of passing yards as a team. So great at stopping the run, not a great secondary. Nacua will be able to sit in those zone coverages, a Colts team that runs a lot of zone. I certainly think he can get a 60 plus. And then Zach Moss, the second leg of this one, he's been super good with or without Anthony Richardson. I mean, Moss, 88 and 122 rushing yards in 2 games this season. He missed week 1. He's done that on 18 and 30 carries. I mean, his rush attempts line is set at about 16 and a half, so they think he gets the rock a lot. And this is a good matchup. Rams allowing 4.6 yards per carry, 7th highest in the NFL. There's a reason we took Joe Mixon's rushing yards prop on Monday Night Football, and while the Bengals refused to give it to him, he still got 65 yards. We saw in week 2, Christian McCaffrey had 116, Kenneth Walker at 64, and a terrible game script against this team. Look, I don't think the Colts really want to see Anthony Richardson throwing it 30 times, 35, 40 times. I think they're going to run the football. Zach Moss should have a good matchup. And even if it is a terrible game script, I certainly think he can easily get 40 plus, whether it's in the first 3 quarters and they're throwing it all the 4th. Certainly think Zach Moss in for a big day. 60 and 40. Like I said, some books don't let you do the 40 and 60. I don't mind either of these guys for 50 plus each, but I'll take this one. If you're on FanDuel, this is the best place to take it. And finally, let's wrap it up with a big ladder play. We're talking about Quentin Johnston. my favorite ladder play of the weekend. Let's talk about him. We're taking his receiving yards prop. Here's how I'm playing it, and we'll talk about this one. Now I'm putting 3/4 of a unit, 0.75 units, on his regular over at 27.5 receiving yards, minus 114 on FanDuel. If you just want to stop there, maybe you can't play, his other lines, which we'll talk about in 2 seconds. Maybe put a full unit on his regular over and just disregard the other two. But I'm putting 0.75 units, putting 0.25 units on his 50 plus, which is plus 300 on FanDuel, and putting 0.1 unit on his 75 plus at plus 925 on Bet365. If Quentin Johnson has 75 receiving yards on Sunday, we'll have risked 1.1 units and won back nearly 2.4. I think this is a great high risk, high reward play. There's a reason I'm not throwing 1 unit on his regular over, just because I think this is a risk play. There's obviously every bet comes with risk, but let's talk about why I like Quentin Johnston, because it is a risky play. This is a guy, if you're watching the video after the fact, he could have 1 yard. That's reasonable. It could happen, but we look at who's out for the Chargers offense. Mike Williams, sad, torn ACL. Austin Eckler, doubtful to play. Mike Williams and Quentin Johnston had nearly the identical size in terms of metrics. Mike Williams, 6'4", 218 pounds. Johnston, 6'4", 215. This is a team that spent a first-round pick, the 21st overall pick, on Quentin Johnston. You might not have ever heard of him because you look at his stats so far through 3 weeks, you'd be like, this guy has done absolutely nothing. But now that Mike Williams is out, I think a lot of people are just going to assume Joshua Palmer has been with the team for several years, goes right into that Mike Williams role. But I don't think that's really what the Chargers want to do. Joshua Palmer obviously will see an uptick in usage. So will Keenan Allen. He'll still keep doing, Keenan Allen, I don't think he can possibly see an uptick in usage. His usage has been ridiculous. But I think the guy to target here is Quentin Johnston. Like I said, same metrics as Mike Williams. This guy has elite speed, he makes plays. He was great with TCU. And ultimately, we've seen Mike Williams already have 83 and 121 yards this season. Sure, Quentin Johnston is a complete, random. We don't know what to expect from Quentin Johnston because he hasn't played more than 15 to 20% of the snaps, but I think he's in for a big workload. I don't necessarily say, he's the number 2 guy. Go pick him up in fantasy football. But I think there could be a shot where he has a big game. This guy has big play potential, just like Mike Williams. And look, at the end of the day, I'm putting 1.1 units on this guy. If he flops, whatever. But I rather take a risk on something like this where this guy's line is super low. This could be the lowest line we've ever seen. In my opinion, when I look after this game, I would rather say, you know what, Austin? Bad call. Quentin Johnson just did not go into that Mike Williams role. It was Joshua Palmer and the other guys, Gerald Everett, they did that role. Dang it, bad call. You lost 1.1 units. Instead of not taking this risk and taking, then just looking at the box score and seeing, Quentin Johnson went off for 100 yards, 75. I'd rather at least take a chance on this guy because I think there's a good chance this could be the lowest line you ever see for Quentin Johnston. So I'll take a risk here with him. 75 plus receiving yards, plus 925, I think is worth a sprinkle. 0.1 unit, that could be $10, could be $1 for you, depending on your unit size. I think we got a good chance cashing here. Hopefully he gets at least the first leg. And if he gets that leg, we're playing with house money at that point. Quentin Johnston, we're big fans of you, man. Go get it done. Have a big week. Filling out those Mike Williams shoes, who's out for this year. We're rolling with you. And finally, my Underdog Fantasy entry. I'll throw it up on the screen. But as a reminder, Underdog Fantasy up until October 4th. You can sign up using our code COS or the top link in the description. You get a 100% deposit match up to $500. $500. It's free money. Take advantage of it. All the details down below, and you will get that free square for Patrick Mahomes on Sunday Night Football. If you sign up after Sunday Night Football, you get one for Monday Night Football. So take advantage of it. My code always works. You get up to 100% deposit match. Just right now, it's up to 500. Normally, it's just 100. So take advantage of that. You see all the legs on the screen. Thielen, we already talked about. Madison, we already talked about. Derrick Henry, we already talked about. Jalen Waddle, we already talked about. The one I have not talked about, T. Higgins. And I don't need to talk about him because I talk about him in this video on the screen. Go check it out. My favorite game picks and a couple other props. T. Higgins is one of them. Why I think he is due for a big day. And a hint, I'm on a ladder play for him as well. Go check out that video plus another prop plus my other game picks. Check out the long shot parlay video when it is live. Let's have a wonderful Sunday, everyone. You have a great rest of your weekend. Let's dominate. Quentin Johnston, we're counting on you, man. We're going to be watching you at 4 o'clock. We'll see you guys in the next one. My name's Austin. Signing out. Peace.